Washington Post poll from last month had you with less than 0.5% of African-American support. That's lower than even Mayor Pete Buttigieg. He has 2%. And I've said this often on the show, you need African-American support to become the Democratic nominee. Now, your tough on crime approach when you were a county attorney in Minnesota is criticized for disproportionately harming black and brown people. And when I look at that record, you know, you failed to prosecute a single killing by the police during the 8 years you headed prosecutions. And there were more than 24 police-involved killings in that period. That's just one example. How do you defend that record?
Okay, well, let's start. I'll lead out to the support, but I want to start with my work as county attorney. We all know there's systematic racism in this criminal justice system. There's no doubt about that. And I worked really hard when I was there, and I'm proud of the work we did to go after white-collar criminals, to use drug court in a big way. We had a very successful drug court, and we actually found got a 12% decrease in incarceration rates for African Americans. And I also diversified the office, which I think is really, really important. But there is so much more work that we have to do. And that's why when I got to the U.S. Senate, I started working on things like the First Step Act, which we passed, which has decreased the criminal penalties and allowed some nonviolent offenders to get out of prison. I think we have to do that in a bigger way as well. And then as for my support in the African-American community, I've always had strong support in my elections at home. And I have a number of key leaders in the African-American community from Minnesota that have gone and campaigned for me in places like California and Iowa, and that will continue. So my challenge is to get people to know me. My message of economic opportunity, of investing in our schools, I think that matters. I think that my focus on voting rights, Sonny, I am the leader on the bill to register every kid in this country when they turn 18. I think that is going to matter. I'm the leader on the bill to get rid of gerrymandering, to get rid of voting purges. As my friend Stacey Abrams, who go ahead.
Senator, you know, I think that your record as a prosecutor matters as well. And when you campaigned for the Senate, you cited your prosecution of 16-year-old black teenager Mayan Burrell as an example of having been an aggressive prosecutor. And it gives me no pleasure to say this because, as you know, I was a prosecutor as well. I've reviewed the facts of that case, and it is one of the most flawed investigations and prosecutions that I think I have ever seen. When you look at it, you have your homicide detective on tape offering informants $500 a piece for names. When I looked at it, I also saw that Mr. Burrell's alibi witnesses were not looked at. His surveillance tapes were not looked at. I mean, how do you defend something like that to someone like me who is the mother of a black boy, a black teenager? This case would be my worst nightmare.
Well, Sonny, I'll start with this. I've been very clear. All of the evidence needs to be immediately reviewed in that case. The past evidence and also any new evidence that has come forward, I've called for that. And I think you and I both share that background. And I have always believed that a job of a prosecutor is to protect the innocent and convict the guilty. But protect the innocent has to be key. So this case involved an 11-year-old African-American girl who was shot doing her homework at her kitchen table. I got to know her family, and I worked with them. But I would say, I think any prosecutor who cares about justice, and I've always been on the side of justice, would say all evidence must be reviewed immediately, and that's what I think has to happen here.
Well, you're a U.S.
So thank
Senator.
you for bringing it up.
Well, you're a U.S. Senator now. You're a powerful woman. What do you intend to do to right this wrong?
Well, I've called for the office and the courts to review the evidence. That is what we must do in the justice system. I've also worked extensively with the Innocence Project in my previous job, and we reviewed all the serious cases we had that involved DNA evidence. This one didn't, but we reviewed those cases.
It had no gun, it had no DNA evidence, and it had no fingerprints.
Are we prosecuting
Exactly.
Amy
So
Klobuchar
this is
today?
a case that must be reviewed. Sonny, I think you know that I care so much about justice, and this case must be reviewed.
Senator Klobuchar, this is Megan again. Over the weekend.
Hi, Megan.
Hi, how are you? Bernie Sanders said, this is a quote. He said, "I think being pro-choice is an absolutely essential part of being a Democrat." And you got some attention over the weekend because you don't seem to think that. You seem to think that there's room for pro-life people in your party. I just want to confirm, do you think there's room for pro-life Democrats to vote for you?
Well, first I say this, I am strongly pro-choice. I have always been pro-choice, but I believe we're a big tent party, and there are pro-life Democrats, and they are part of our party, and I think we need to build a big tent. I think we need to bring people in instead of shutting them out, and that also includes independents right here in New Hampshire, as well as moderate Republicans.
Well, thank you so much.
It's lovely to have you on, even though
Thank
you're
you.
not here in person. It was really lovely to talk to you, Amy. Senator
See you at the
Klobuchar.
polls
Well,
tonight. We're
I
looking
look
forward to the
forward, I look
possible Klobus surge tonight.
It should be great. We're excited. I'm looking forward, and I look forward to coming in the studio. Sonny and I can talk more, and we are just watch for us tonight. New Hampshire likes to surprise the nation, and that's what I want to do tonight.
Sonny's husband is tough.